Alright, so this will be a little bit of a raw video, I guess we can call it. And this is from Season 1 unreleased footage. So I figured the first project I wanted to show off was our fuel processing, well, I guess I mean our power plant that was turbo fuel, or that uses turbo fuel. This was kind of like the first iteration of the design language that I'm using in the current Let's Play series. We can see the repeating vertical foundations, creating the nice parallel striping, using 1 meter foundations here. Definitely a lot of tedious work, especially when you're not using the actual blueprint machine. But I thought it came out really great. Looks pretty slick, and nice little housing facility. I do like the glass walls here. This is something that I didn't really carry over up until the recent builds, using the floor to ceiling windows, and I think I want to bring this back, especially for the minor enclosures, making them properly accessible and not just like the 2 meter foundations. It feels a little contrived. So potentially going to revisit that. Here's a first look at a logistics tower for our oil piping. I'm trying not to look up intentionally, and kind of how we're routing the piping here. And this is where I originally started using this nice rich red piping, heavily indicative of or inspired by Mirror's Edge. And for some reason, the red on this save feels different than the red in Season 2. This feels like it has a little extra orange to it overall, but like a little bit of Heinz ketchup or something. Anyway, so here's the reveal of the original turbo fuel facility. Nice and big, very tall, many generators. This was a build based on hexagons, as we can kind of see the theme here. Well, I mean, technically this is a decagon, but overall the premise was to build something off of hexagons. So kind of going through the factory from start to finish. We have our oil being extracted over there. It comes into these 9 refineries making heavy oil residue on the base floor here, or on our base sandwich layer. Those go up into the back of the refineries, and then out comes the heavy oil residue, and the polymer resin goes into a sink outright. We're not reusing it for plastic or anything like that like we are in our current playthrough. From here, the heavy oil residue, here we go, comes down to the base here, is then transported onto the baseline. It almost looks like it was oil, but the oil stops here. So our heavy oil residue cuts over, goes through our main tower of fuel generators, heads off into this direction, and this is where we have our packaging loop. So the packages on the back side here, along with our water extractors. The intent was to fully enclose these in, as we can kind of see here, that design. One thing we did bypass a little bit or briefly was RSR, the assemblers over here, making our compacted coal. Essentially this build was half of the intended build, and this happened before they changed some recipes around, because we have 3 towers with 9 floors, and we have 5 generators per floor, so that's 135 fuel generators, but we only have 10 assemblers making our compacted coal. And I'm under the impression that the recipe or the burn rate has changed for turbo fuel, and I believe that might have happened when they changed over the MAM stuff. But it, based on the fact that the current Let's Play series has 8 towers of 20 generators, or 160, means that we have less than double the fuel generators, but we have double everything else. So I think the burn rate might have changed. Don't quote me on that, I could be wrong. Anyway, our compacted coal comes through on the mid tier here. And again, our heavy oil residue is on this tier. And then below is our turbo fuel, which is coming back down toward us. So we have the heavy oil residue going up, getting packaged into package diluted, being unpackaged, and then the regular fuel is being transported in the middle, compacted coal going up into our refineries that are making our turbo fuel, and then that turbo fuel comes back on the bottom here and is being fed up into our fuel generators. Something that was nice or convenient with this build is we used the water tower strategy. So in this singular tower, we have Mark II pumps taking everything up the center, and then everything comes back down this side pipe here. And it's the side pipe that's actually filling feeding all of the fuel generators. And this is great because it essentially allows a top-down filling for the most part. The fuel generators up at the very top. This is kind of loud. Let me head away from that. The fuel generators up at the very top technically are being bottom fed. Also, my hot bars in here are different than the other Let's Play. So it's a little challenging. Yeah, it should work. Oh, no, that won't. Let me reposition this. I want to head up top and just kind of show what we got going on. That should work. It's be a little loud. And then all of the fuel generators do have or are built on blueprints. As I mentioned in the other Let's Play, I lost those. But essentially it was this topper piece as a blueprint, and then we had individual components that go all the way up as a blueprint as well. And then these, as you can see, are blueprints with the power for them being fed underneath them and then coming to the center line and being transported vertically down the center tower. So yeah, the fuel comes up in the middle, hits all the fuel generators, and then goes down on the sides. And so this allows the top-down fill for most of them. It definitely seems like I am not producing enough turbo fuel based on how our kind of system is failing here. But yeah, so this was kind of to get us through the mid-game, and was kind of heavily inspired kind of what we were doing in Season 2. So tapping the same coal and sulfur nodes, bringing that over. Obviously we needed to tap more in the current Let's Play because we were doubling up pretty much everything. And then, pretty much built in the same spot. The one thing that I did do when I was building this or concepting the design is, like I showed anyway, I designed this in my actual graphic design software. I used Adobe Illustrator, and I got a map image, the topographic map image seen on Satisfactory Calculator, and scaled it so that way it matches the foundations, and was able to essentially pre-plan the footprint with the hexagonal designs and everything, and making sure that everything was going to work. And we can kind of see that design language, like I mentioned in the aluminum factory, where I redid it for the drones, the 2x4 for the refineries, same thing for the assemblers, the 3x3 for the fuel gens, which is now changed to 4x4, or I think 5x5. Yeah, 5x5. So this was a really intense build, and at the time kind of what attributed to some burnout. Not to mention was pre-storage depots, so I had a lot of stuff brought manually just to kind of have on hand for everything, and ultimately was a pain in the butt. Get this reconnected up and we'll head over. I don't think we need all of this. Just go here. Oh, we didn't need all of that. So, you know, before storage depots, central storage was needed or very beneficial, lucrative. And that was something that I was working on that I ultimately did not come to fruition in season 2 just because it wasn't really necessary, but here it is. So we're heading in from a direction that's not intended, but this is our item storage depot. So we have our industrial storage containers, and they are technically all labeled. This was the first instance of the can light, but everything was kind of sorted out and organized based on item and natural progression through the game. So first starting with like basic copper and iron product. We have this was using infinite nudge, so we got a crafting bench, our workstation, some private storage for like the incidentals, equipment, alien components or byproduct, etc. Some manual stuff. That was nice and tucked away. And then also we have a billboard up here, which is actually able to cast light because it's just on the outside of the Z fighting for the foundation above it. I wish I had infinite nudge so I could kind of repeat this, but I think the solution we have with our nudge solution works great. Industrial storage container here, same thing, using infinite nudge to make it seem like it's accessible storage with how the everything's aligned here, but we can just essentially take everything and store it, and it will automatically organize it and go down the line, which we'll take a look at. We got our fix-it shop over here, kind of tucked away into the wall as best as possible, but I wanted a nice clean, as clean of a look as possible. Interesting point of order, we have the interior corner extension for the coated concrete, and this is the result of that bug of the alignment. So it happened post 0.8 or update 8 and pre 1.0, and they still haven't fixed it, which I'm still kind of struggling with. Yeah, I hope they fix that real soon. This is why I've been hesitant to use it in the current Let's Play, because once they fix it, it'll then shift back down. So everything that I've used, everything that I've built with this will shift down in the current Let's Play series. Before we continue on, nice little back room here using that corner or the soft corner inlet. And this is, this is like a main corridor, nice, open and airy. Same thing over here. This is meant to be kind of like a back access. So the overall dimension of this being 4x4 meters, nice and small, a little access denied type thing. The illumination does not work as it did originally when I was designing this, but this was a little bit properly lit. But we have all of our storage here on the back end. We have an underground passage, and this is actually decently illuminated. Again, that low lighting situation, because this is an infrequent passage of transit or like foot traffic. If we head up top though, since I'm not saving this, I'll just kind of cut through. So we can see everything being filtered up top. So we have two 480 belts because I don't have Mark V yet, going through and organizing everything. And essentially anything that comes in from our train system. Oh, I need fuel. And all my fuel just got stored. All right. Anyway, we can kind of get the idea that everything gets organized and sorted out. And, I made that comment about trains, so we'll take a look at that. As you can see, at the very end, too, we have our awesome sinks, so anything that's left over just gets synced. We don't actually utilize. But heading down below, let's go ahead and check out the train station, which is this way. So we can see the upper logistics for all of this. So we have our train station outputs coming through here, goes up into these channels here, which then feeds over into those mergers that then cycle everything around. I think this is all just dead space. Great game, by the way. So we'll actually go down to the train now. We have power from the train routed up, and that gets connected into everything. Yeah, these used to be a lot brighter prior to the update, and I don't think it's because I have it set to moody. I think it's because they ultimately made changes to global illumination. Yeah, this is set to bright. So heading down below, we have more back end, behind the scenes logistics. These are the lifts that are going up into the space that we saw prior. So we have some nicely laid foundations to kind of integrate the train station, and this was the first kind of solution for trains that I created to try and hide the busyness of the actual train station itself. And we do have room over here for our storage, or for our freight rather, coming in off the train. Do a quick little loop to kind of demonstrate the train logistic towers that we have here. So we can see that we have our lights up above to illuminate this. Did have some bugs with the painted concrete on these. We do have 1 meter high asphalt foundations on the top, and then creating the horizontal lines in between here as well. This is just a little test loop to kind of test the functionality of the train rail system. It came out really great. Hopping on out. We'll head back up. A lot darker in here to navigate. The right way? Yes, and then left. Alright, back into the back rooms. Go through here. So some of y'all might have seen the YouTube short, which was from here, going forward, slowly going up as I progress through this corridor. What's going on here? Oh. All of our interior corner 2 meters have shifted. So these are all supposed to be can lights. These are built off of a blueprint. But again, because of this shift here in the corners, this all shifted up. So it's not meant to be rectangular lights. It's meant to be circular, which is kind of a bummer. But we have our Mark 1 blueprint designer. Technically, we would have room for the Mark 2. And I think maybe even the Mark 3. I'm not 100% certain. I think the Mark 2 would come out to here. And I think Mark 3 would come out to here. Yeah, so this was kind of like this is where I'm concepting everything. And then if I needed more inventory, I could just go into the corridor here and grab it. We'll go up the ramp first. So heading up the ramp. Over here was meant to be the Bat Cave entrance with our Explorer. We have like essentially some spacers here for the water to drain through and not come into the actual space, but the intent was to kind of drive down. Oh, they changed this, so this cave wouldn't even be accessible with the vehicle anymore anyway because of the changes here. But this used to be a little wider and open for us to be able to drive a vehicle up. Heading off in this direction was going to be our hypertube launcher array. So we would essentially have a vertical hypertube cannon that would then transport us into 8 cardinal directions. That would be above the canyon here, so that way we weren't going to just smack into the side of it. But that ultimately did not come to fruition. Heading back. Oh crap, I don't have a jetpack. I don't have fuel. Standby one. Alright, just went ahead and loaded up an autosave. Got back up top. I'm gonna go grab some fuel though before I forget. Okay. Oh, nope, that's computers. I must have passed it. Unless I don't have packaged. I don't think I ever filtered packaged fuel. Oh, I did. Okay, fantastic. All right. So continuing on where we were. Also, one of the things that I completely missed is I was trying to be intentional with natural surfaces and bringing in some organicness to the build. So I left the structure there. And then also over here did the same thing. Kind of created this nice little like ambiance corner here. The lighting doesn't really work as intended anymore. But we do have some billboards over here to kind of cast some light and kind of illuminate the space and make it visible. Without it, we wouldn't be able to see anything. Heading off into this direction, this was something that I was particularly proud of. Over onto this side, one, we got some interesting lights here, which are kind of just fun. They technically are supposed to be casting more light. Again, illumination changes. But if we go through this door, it's the hub. So we'd have access to everything. Still in tiers 5 and 6. But if we go above here, kind of show how I designed around this. So I was very intentional with the hub's placement. So that way when I built the foundations around it, the drone would kind of feel appropriate. So like there is some clipping, but I feel like it's tasteful. And we still have room for the actual cargo pod as part of the drone. But I thought that was really cool to just kind of have it fit as needed. Overall though, I thought the design of this was pretty fantastic, and I was looking forward to it. You know, obviously hit that burnout and did not complete, but this was meant to be the kind of main complex for this playthrough. I still might do something just for the sake of doing it, because it would be kind of cool, especially like, you know, we still need a blueprint designer. It still would be nice to have the hub somewhere. You know, we could do central storage to an extent that's not overtly needed. You know, maybe some basic processing, like backdoor type thing with power slugs and organic material. But yeah, so this was kind of that further exploration or expansion of that design language with the 2-meter high foundations kind of repeating up and using like those glass walls and cutouts like we saw in the blueprint room, for example. But the original, like the very, very first place that this was all kind of tested, that design language, was our computer factory. And this one was quite a build initially, and a fun one. I did enjoy making this. I kind of challenged myself in some ways. But here's our computer factory, and the build was self-sustaining, which was kind of cool. So we tapped 3 oil nodes over here, 2 normal and then an impure, and we're making plastic for the factory. We're making fuel to burn for power, which has been beneficial. This was kind of the first attempt at that hexagonal solution. So this was before I did turbo fuel, and I drew inspiration from this design for it. And it had like this interesting kind of spiral situation going up the side here. Kind of spits us out on the top here. So yeah, this was just an opportunity to have some self-sustained power for the build, so we can kind of see like what's making fuel, what's making plastic, etc. But we have our plastic heading over in this direction, coming across. It is backed up. Some stuff is, I think, has broken, but we can kind of see here the intended, or like the original kind of concept or idea. And I was going for this like futuristic vibe, obviously. I was attempting to try and get these quarter pipes to work with how it could just kind of create this unique set, or like kind of establish a sense of floor breaks in a sense, if possible. And I think ultimately, if I recall correctly, because this was done a while ago, I believe I kind of pulled inspiration from the Wheel of Time and how they kind of portrayed some of the buildings in that, and during one specific shot, and that's all I'll say about it. But we have our copper and iron coming up, And this was kind of a fun build because I built it in a square. And I tried to be symmetrical in a square. So we have 12 smelters, I think 9 of which are making copper pieces, like refining copper. The rest is iron. Could be the inverse. Similar situation here. So we have like 5 constructors on each side, but they're all offset a little bit, just to kind of create some depth, instead of just being in a plain straight line. And everything kind of, figuring out the logistics to make all of this work was a challenge and a half, because it's supposed to be load balanced. Ultimately, though, that didn't really seem to work out in the long run. 8 assemblers here, making all of our various product. I think the reason why everything broke is because there's an issue with the output or power. No, everything's just kind of backing up. I don't think they changed the recipe for the computer, but I could be wrong based on how this is all backed up. But yeah, all this for 5 computers per minute. Which is a lot. Well, I guess 5 computers and some power, ultimately. But yeah, besides the heavy modular frames, so essentially after heavy modular frames, I worked on computers because that was kind of the next step, because I wanted to get trains online. And then it was like, all right, well, we need to upgrade our power. So we did turbo fuel. And then once turbo fuel was online, I was like, all right, time to really get organized. And that's where I started working on our central hub here and getting this all sorted out. So yeah, that's just a quick, like I said, raw, rough cut of kind of where things went with season 1 of, unreleased content. And, I feel like I've done a good job in the second season, or second playthrough of the game. I think, the storage depots made things a lot easier, just being able to build and not deal with the inventory logistics of the game up front. I also think I made some smart decisions early game in season 2 regarding rushing the blueprint machine to take a lot of effort and work out of kind of how things were being designed. I think ultimately, as far as I got in terms of manufacturing parts for the elevator, not far. I was essentially getting everything kind of compiled and then working on manually, setting down the assemblers and manually feeding them to generate the components that we would need. I think the one thing I did fairly well in this one to centralize things early, was utilizing tractors and bringing everything here into this very rough kind of solution. Like we even got our computers over here, which was fantastic. And then, oh, that's right. Our plastic and rubber facility was making the packaged fuel. I completely forgot about that. So yeah, super, kind of pleased with how I've kind of expanded beyond what we have here. And I'm excited to keep continuing, the fact that I was able to kind of break through and get into aluminum refinement feels really good overall. Heavy modular frame, I think that was a nice first challenge at kind of doing something new. But I think with where we've gone with the pure white was ultimately a great decision and feels very, in a sense. And yeah, very pleased. So that will do it. And I appreciate those who have been with the channel since season 1 and before, starting all the way back from 20 reinforced iron plates. Here's kind of where we got in the middle, and I'm excited to continue with where we are at now. So with that, thank you so much for watching. Take care. What? Are you serious? That's crazy. Why would I survive that? That's bogus.